Hi, I'm a straight man.
And I'm a white man.
And this is REVIEWANEW, where we look at the filmography of Kevin Smith and how the movies have transformed over time as interesting sort of
cultural artifacts.
Yeah. You may know me. I'm Darren Jackson, aka the Rap Critic on YouTube. I also have the Going Off podcast, and this is my friend Evan. Let the lovely people know about you.
So I am not an actor, but I used to be. I actually went to acting school, and when I was in college, if you asked me what are your goals, what are your ambitions, I would say I want to be Kevin Smith. Needless to say, that didn't happen. I didn't get my shit together enough to do that, but I was always really fascinated by what he had done with the View Askew universe and the the characters sort of intersecting various movies and everything coming together, and also like the genre differences between you have Clerks, which is more or less realistic, and then you have everything to Dogma, which is completely supernatural,
hyper realist. Yeah.
So I was really admired him, and so the way we actually started talking about it was that so I'm gay, and Darren said to me like, oh, when was the last time you saw Chasing Amy? Because the last time I saw it was years and years ago, before I was out, and he was like, oh, I want you to watch it and see what you think about it and see how you held up, sort of expecting that it'd be like more offensive, and and I watched it, and we had a really interesting discussion about it, and I said, we had a really in-depth talk about it and how it's held up, and I said we should do a podcast about this. So we're going to be talking about Clerks.
Of course. After all that conversation about Chasing Amy,
which we will get to someday.
Maybe the really long episode, I guess.
But Clerks is where it all started. It's Kevin Smith's. Yeah. I can get his name right too. Kevin Smith's first movie came out in '94. I think it was shot a couple years before that, and black and white cult classic. And the interesting thing about it being a cult classic is that I think, like some other cult classics, people remember certain highlights, remember certain things, and they think like, oh, I remember this weird gross out part that happened, and this line, and this thing, and that. But think of it as like a lot of random stuff happening, and don't remember
the full package.
And how carefully crafted it is, because when you really look at it, by the way, there is going to be a lot of spoilers. This is a deep dive, so don't listen if you have not watched Clerks, unless you just want to be confused.
we're about to go deep into the ins and outs, especially because of how well crafted I feel like it is. And maybe part of that is because you don't expect it to be. There's an interesting through line that I think is going to keep coming up as we look through it.
So the through line is Dante is constantly saying his catchphrase is, I'm not even supposed to be here today. Yeah. So the movie opens with him getting called in on his day off, and the entire movie says, I'm not supposed to be here, I'm not even supposed to be here.
But he does it anyway.
And it's very revealing of Dante's character. So before we get too far into this, Thirst Corner?
Okay, well,
we've agreed that I have a thirst corner because I have to contain my raging homosexual lust to a small portion of the podcast. So here it is. Oh my God, Jeff Anderson was fucking hot in his early 20s. Jesus Christ, that was a fucking hot little twink with his little ass and the acid wash jeans. And
oh my God.
The fucking cheekbones.
Jesus Christ.
Randall Graves. No, he could. No, well, that's another discussion. The acting in the movie is another discussion. But Randall Graves, one of the two main characters, is extremely pretty, and I am just expressing that now, and then we can move on.
You don't have any love for Jay? I thought that was
for Jay. He's like 18 in that.
Do you feel bad?
He's jail. He's like jailbait in this movie.
I can't hit on him. That's wrong.
Well, I mean, he looks like a baby. Like he looks like a 12-year-old in that movie.
Fuck this bitch. I'm gonna fuck that bitch.
Yeah,
he
looks like a middle school boy in that. So yeah, no, I mean, I think that Jason Mewes is a very good looking man, but in Clerks he's a boy. So anyway, moving on from Thirst Corner. I do want to note the slate really quickly because I hadn't remembered the slate. The slate in the movie right at the beginning. First thing you see is an animation of a kid sitting there playing with a ball, and a birthday clown comes up,
yeah,
goes out of sight,
that was so weird.
Comes back in lacy stockings with clothespins clipped to his nipples, and the slate that says "View Askew," and then I think he farts on the kid's head, and that is the slate for View Askew production. So I think it's just like setting the tone right there.
Yeah.
This is what we are. Here you go.
This is a lot of gross out humor you need to expect.
So it's a warning. It's a fair warning. Yeah.
And a lot of homoeroticism.
A lot of homoeroticism. Yeah.
That becomes unfurls as
it's interesting.
plot goes further.
So the first shot of the actual movie is a fluffy dog, which is just delightful. I don't think the dog ever comes back.
I think you just needed to see a nice dog.
You just needed to see a nice dog before we get into everything.
See.
And then we hear it's actually the phone ringing, but we don't know it's the phone at first. I thought it was an alarm clock at first before I remembered. And here, to me, it's like, here's the first little brilliant bit of filmmaking.
Okay.
We're in Dante's room. We hear something ringing. He rolls out of his closet. I feel like
my fucking God.
And I feel like homoeroticism. But no, I mean, but just generally.
I never even thought about that.
I wasn't even thinking of it as like in terms of a metaphor.
Right.
But just that in a lesser film, beginning of the movie, we see the character wake up in bed, right? Mm-hmm. And like having him wake up in his closet. That just shows you the detail and the level of specificity that Kevin Smith's putting into this. Is he's not just going to do the it's the morning, so he's waking up in bed. And
there's something specifically what's the word?
Unexpected?
There's something unkempt about this guy. This guy is not put together.
Right. It's also like a character thing. We see his room's very messy. He fell asleep in the closet, and just he's kind of a hot mess. It's also the first title card we see. We see there are title cards throughout the movie, and the movie, and the first one we see says Dante. Also, real quick, his name, Dante, spends the movie in hell.
That's true.
That had to be intentional.
Yeah.
So
okay, damn, I didn't even.
Damn. I still haven't figured out quite what Randall is. If Randall is a reference to anything, but Dante is almost certainly a reference to Dante Alighieri, the poet who wrote and also is the main character in the Divine Comedy, and the most famous part of that is the Inferno, and he's in hell. The first thing we see after the title card is Dante's boss asking him to come in and take a shift, even though it's his day off. Anybody who's ever worked that kind of job knows that feeling of like, it's my day off. Fuck the gut, and that feeling of like I can't say no, because when you're beholden to a boss who puts you on the schedule on totally random shifts whenever they feel like it. I mean, I've worked jobs where like people have turned down extra shifts, and then in retaliation, the management has just refused to schedule them or cut them down to like 10 hours a week.
So there's also that discussion, the discussion of like, not just him as, on one level we could say, yeah, he's just a slacker, yeah, he's just that, and yeah, he's just this. But on another level, it's like, how much is out of his control as a person? Like, he's coming in on his day off, and we treat that like a vice, but it's just like, how much control does he really have over that?
And I think it's a discussion. I think also, like, cultural context is important. I'm not an expert on economic history, but I think that in the early 90s, the economy was a little bit better than it is now.
Well.
And also, like, he's living with his parents. It's not like he will be on the streets if he doesn't.
Right.
I think that
I forgot how young these people were.
They're 22. The main characters are 22,
and they're still talking about shit that happened in high school.
Yeah,
like
They're very young. They're very young. I think we're meant to believe that Dante is sort of self-defeating and has this like learned helplessness, and not that he's genuinely, but at the same time on a micro level, because on a macro level, like he could make changes. On a micro level, just nobody wants to lose their job, nobody wants to get fired, and on a micro level, if you think like, I could say no to my boss, but I think that's a familiar feeling. So,
and then we have Randall, who doesn't give a shit.
And Randall's very interesting because he's just constantly, like, it's somehow amazing that he hasn't gotten fired. But also, I think, and I'm not 100% sure, I'm like 95% sure, it seems that the Quick Stop and the video store are owned by the same
I think so.
person.
Yeah.
So, like, because Randall comes in and works at the, he comes in and works the register. Like, there doesn't seem to be any issue with them going back and forth. So, if they're owned by the same person, they have the same boss, Randall gets away with everything he does.
That is a good point. Yeah, if he's...
Clearly, Dante could have gotten away with more than he's getting...
Shit, that is a good point. I never thought about that. Yeah, if this guy is able to get away with all this stuff, why is he being such a... You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like,
Damn.
and it may be like a compensation thing, like, well, Randall's fucking up so much, I can't. But, so, we get... that phone call, and we hear the premise of the movie that Dante's gonna go into work on his day off, and then we get the title card that says Clerks, the title of the movie. And then we watch Dante getting ready, and it's all
that music is incredible. I love it.
The music is all really good, and the lyrics all line up. So like when he's opening the Quick Stop, there's this recurring line about save up your nickels and dimes. And it's that idea of like working for an extremely low wage and the sort of futility of that and the Sisyphean nature of just trying to
make it by another day.
Right. And so I noticed this, and then I remembered somebody else commenting on it, that Dante, when he's getting ready, he notices there's no newspapers. He takes a dime out of the register. He goes to the newspaper box, the newspaper vending thing outside, steals all the newspapers out of it, gets his coin back, and then goes and puts the coin back in the register. And some people have said, like, well, that just shows that even though he's not like a generally like morally, perfect person, because he did steal, but he has that loyalty to his job that he'll steal all these newspapers, but he's not going to steal a coin out of the drawer.
I see what you're saying.
And part of me, but also like the person who's worked retail in me is going, yeah, but they're going to count that drawer. It might not necessarily, but it does show that, like, for whatever the motivation is, whether it's just loyalty or being afraid of getting in trouble, whatever his motivation is, he is very conscientious about work, about his job, and that he's not going to steal from or even like be sloppy with the register. So he's just kind of coming up against these continuous little frustrations, and the steel shutters on the window don't open. So he goes and gets like a big tarp or something and writes on it in shoe polish, "I assure you we're open," and hangs it up. And I will say, like, whenever I've worked the kind of like crap minimum wage jobs like that, there's something about getting to do something a little bit out of the ordinary like that, making a little judgment call, like getting to write a sign or anything that you have to do, like, oh, I had to put a sign there, or I had to do this, or there's like a little bit of like excitement that comes with that, because it's like, oh, something a little out of the ordinary. I made a judgment call. I did something a little creative.
Right, because he didn't seem a little proud of himself.
Right, it's like, some creative problem solving that is a little bit more than, just working the register and doing the usual. And I will say, like, looking back now that I watched the whole movie, going back, he writes a sign in shoe polish. Yeah. And throughout the entire movie, people keep commenting that he smells like shoe polish.
Like shoe polish. In fact, that's when his girlfriend comes in.
Yeah.
Wait. Okay, so we got to talk about his relationships.
Yes, definitely. Well, so
how does this guy have two women fighting over him?
Oh, right.
What's really going on?
Well, I will say I know a lot of straight women, and
who would fuck with that?
I know a lot of straight women who are involved with guys that make you go, why is she bothering with that guy? Like, I was gonna say, like,
because Dante's schlubby, he doesn't have a lot going for himself, and she is trying so hard to pick him up, and we kind of see that at the end of the film where she explains how.
Well, and there's also a thing that I've noticed with some people I know of, like, the project of like, and straight guys do this too, like with straight guys trying to rescue a girl, it's more the white knight thing, but with girls I've noticed the like, oh, like, he just needs more support, he just needs more encouragement. I know so many girls like Veronica who've dated guys like Dante. We get a new title card that says vilification, and it's the first title card I think it's the first title card that has like
just a word,
like a title instead of just the character name. So we see this guy who's kind of like doing a little anti-smoking thing and telling a customer like...
Okay, I think this is a very interesting conversation.
Yes.
Let's talk about this one because he comes in and at first it kind of seems like he's just like, this is a normal conversation. Hey, wait a minute. This seems wrong. It's wrong that people are being sent here to smoke. As a matter of fact, I just happen to have some information about it. And you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, the guy. It slowly gets more and more. It slowly gets more and more absurd. So the guy, and by the way, like side note, I watched this and I remembered classmates of mine in acting school doing this scene.
Really?
The scene.
This is a good scene to do.
Yeah. So we've got this guy. There's one guy trying to buy cigarettes from Dante, and then there's this other guy who's telling the kid who's trying to buy the cigarettes, like, you shouldn't smoke. Here's what your lung's going to look like. Gives him a tracheal tube, shows him pictures of cancer.
It's like, it's not that he's wrong. He's just being an asshole.
He's being an asshole, but it's also like, it's still sort of within the realm of like, you can imagine, like, yeah, okay. And then it's kind of funny because Dante convinces the guy, like, okay, just leave it alone. And the first guy leaves, and then another guy comes in and says, like, I'd like some cigarettes. Whoa, what's that? And it's like the perfect button of like, you just know. So then we cut to the men of the hour, Jay and Silent Bob. You know, we have this very iconic image of Jay and Silent Bob, which to me, like, I think of them as how they look mainly in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and in Dogma and in Chasing Amy. But they look very different. Well, at least Silent Bob looked more or less the same. Jay looked very different.
You know what I found interesting about... I found this out about the poster for the Clerks movie. It did not have Jay on it. And the reason why is because they thought he would look too scary. They thought people would be too scared from the film and be like... yeah, but
he looks... Well,
and it just shows, because it's funny, because like he's the poster boy for the View Askew universe.
Yeah, and the thing that's funny to me is that, like, to me, like, we're talking about like the homoeroticism. Jay looks very queer coded in the way he looks in Clerks. He's got a big earring.
Yeah.
He's got a big earring. He's got what I think of as a lesbian undercut. One of his first interactions is he just randomly he turns to Bob. He says, "You look really cute.
Out of nowhere,
out of nowhere, he says, "You look really cute. I want to suck your cock." And he gets down on his knees and he starts miming sucking Bob's cock. And then only when a car honks at them does he jump up and go, "Ew, you faggot! I don't like it. I'm not, you know."
All throughout the film, there are lots of him referencing gay stuff.
Yeah.
Like, oh, he cocksmoker, this fucking F-word Dante, and da-da-da. Is this, that, and the third? And it's just like, well, yeah, why does this guy keep focusing on it?
Yeah.
You know? Going back to the scene, though, with the...
with the smoking. Because then once we've gotten a taste, just a little taste of Jay and Silent Bob, we cut back to... And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, we didn't see the ramp up, but we know that there was a gradual ramp up, but when we go back in the store, the anti-smoking guy is standing on a soapbox. I don't think literally, but he's like on a soapbox. He's addressing a crowd like a street preacher, and he's like riling them up, and he's literally comparing poor Dante to a Nazi because he's just following orders by selling them cigarettes.
And it just shows how nonsense it's like. Because here's the thing: it's not that he doesn't have whatever point that he has. It's just that you're hassling this clerk who's got he has no power,
and it's so extreme.
That is virtue signaling. That's what that is.
Well, but then it turns out so. And we've noticed, like, at this point, it's like he's mentioned this particular brand of gum.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you choose some Wrigley's gum instead?
Yeah. Chuli's gum.
Yeah.
And then, so this guy has everybody, like, literally throwing packs of cigarettes at Dante and attacking him. And Veronica comes in. This is the first time we see Veronica, and she's heroic. She's standing up on top of something with
That's right. His girlfriend fucking saves the day.
Right. She's got a fire hydrant, and she sprays them all and yells at them. And she points out, she spots it right away. She says, "This guy, you're selling gum. You're full of shit." And she points out that he's a gum representative. She catches him trying to sneak out the door and holds him. And then, of course, all the mob shamefacedly leaves.
Dante's the damsel in distress in that scene.
Dante's the damsel in distress, and Veronica and Veronica saves him. So that's the first time we see her, is her being heroic and literally saving Dante. And then what is she trying to do the entire movie? She's trying to save Dante.
Yeah.
You know, she's like, the entire point.
It's the way her character is introduced is indicative of how she is throughout the film.
Right.
Of her relation to him as a character.
Her introduction is her seeing through the bullshit and trying to rescue Dante.
She's the most perceptive character in the whole
She's very perceptive,
movie.
yeah. And so I would argue, like, Randall is also very perceptive.
But he's perceptive in a way that only... He is perceptive to the point that it allows him to be lazy. That's the thing that I hate about his character, if we're going to get into it.
Yeah.
Because... there's a scene. I don't know. Do you want to do it completely chronologically?
I mean, we can like jump around a little. Like, I'll just bring us back.
There's a scene in particular where he spits in a customer's face,
right?
And I thought that was like, that's too far.
That's like because he did it intentionally.
Yeah, and that's actually like assaulting someone, and there's no excuse for that.
Randall's an asshole. Randall is an asshole. But he is very perceptive, but like you said, he uses his perception and his intelligence to be lazy and to be an asshole.
Right, and in this scene in particular, what he does is manipulates logic in order to basically just get his friend's car. And it's just like, okay, well... the logic didn't even really add up when you think about it, really.
Yeah, it was really what he did. Like, he thinks he used the logic to manipulate Dante. What he really did was be enough of a pain in the ass that Dante just wanted to get rid of him. That's what he really did.
Yeah, that's what I was, like, noticing. And so it's just like, so there is a sort of scene of, like, I'm just giving in because I just don't want any problems. But that's what makes him feel like he's made a point.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, kind of like those people who, like, when you get tired of arguing with them on Facebook, they say, see, I won. You don't have a response.
He's a troll. That's what he is.
He is a troll. Yeah. Well, so Veronica, we have this scene where Veronica and Dante are like sitting under the counter, and he's put up a little sign that said, like, he's put up a little bit of money and a sign that says, you know, leave the money, take what change you need. I feel like here's where we get our first real choice of, our first real taste of what I think of as, like, very iconic Kevin Smith dialogue.
Okay.
And this is what I noticed when I rewatched Chasing Amy that I hadn't remembered from when I saw it when I was younger, that Kevin Smith's characters speak especially in the earlier movies, like the ones from the 90s, and, like, I think it started to change a little around Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, but definitely, like, the 90s ones, there's this very theatrical, writerly, way too erudite, way too just way too articulate for real people. But
well, it's his first time writing scripts.
It's his first time writing. Yeah. But I don't actually hate that. I think of it, it's stylized, and I think that it's kind of, somebody said this about John Green, that John Green writes teenagers' dialogue, and it doesn't sound like the way adults hear teenagers, it sounds like the way teenagers think they sound. And I feel like
I see what you're trying to get at.
Like Kevin Smith's dialogue from those earlier movies sounds like the way snarky, intelligent, early 20-somethings think they sound.
Okay.
So they're, you know,
a very big thing about this movie. It feels very iconic of the 90s. There are so many moments where I could, like, if I just took a picture of that scene, I'd be like, right
down to the look of it, like the way Veronica's dressed with the, like, it's still little 80s with the shoulder pads, and she's got big hair, and then, you know, and the way that Randall's especially dressed with the backwards hat and the
way they got attitude, you know, Randall's got. If this had gone on, if he was 11,
he would have been, like, in a commercial for a Nerf gun.
Oh, they would have Sonic the Hedgehog this motherfucker so bad.
So. But what I will say here too, and this is coming back to, like, this movie is not just style over substance, it's not just random stuff, it's not just, like, zingers, is that in that conversation between Dante and Veronica, it's not just a writer showing off, like, here's this clever shit that I can write in this dialogue being also philosophical. We learn really important things about Dante and Veronica and their relationship and the story. We find out, like, that Dante lives with his mom, and that Veronica's been trying to get him to go back to school, and that this is
That's true.
That this is and that he hates his job, which isn't exactly a huge revelation, but we find out that Veronica is like been on this path to try and get him more successful. What I was also going to say about the dialogue being purposeful is that I feel like a lot of times you might have like two characters that are arguing, and there's one whose job is to be right and to reflect whatever the author thinks, and there's another whose job is to be wrong. And the thing is with their argument is that what Dante is saying about sex is wrong, but the point of it is not to be like Veronica being a mouthpiece and like, here's the truth, and then look at this stupid idiot just being a foil for the truth. It's actually showing a lot about Dante's character and about what the problem is. The fact that Dante's, when he says that like, oh, women, it's really easy to make a guy come, a woman doesn't have to do anything, it's no accomplishment, she's just lying there, blah, blah, blah. It's not just that he's wrong and that he's kind of has a stupid view about sex and women. It's that he does not understand. He's saying to his girlfriend, you could be a dead fish and I don't care.
Oh,
and
wow.
he doesn't realize.
Yeah.
And he doesn't realize. She literally has to tell him that that he's insulting her.
Because it's interesting the way, I thought it was interesting the way she's like, she was defending that it's actually harder to, like, she was defending the idea that it actually is a bit of an art to make a guy come. And I was like, that's an interesting way to defend it. But then it's interesting that you say it's like, the reason why she's doing that is because you're kind of insulting me right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's insulting her and also like quite literally just taking her for granted, because he's saying like, you don't have any special ability, like sex with you, like it could be sex with anybody or anything, I don't care, whatever.
That is a good
like
point.
He literally says that like he would have sex with a paraplegic because they don't put up a fight, which is really gross. But like, you know, and I think the thing that's interesting about that is while he's saying all this to her, while he's saying this horribly insulting stuff and taking her for granted, he's painting her nails, which is this kind of very performative, I care about you, I'm doing this thing for you, but doing that while being a dick. And I think that also, like, that's kind of revealing of his character too, that he's got these sort of superficial, like, I'm going to be a good boyfriend and paint my girlfriend's nails. I'm going to be a good employee and follow all the rules and come in on the day off and not, steal the dime out of the register.
But I'm going to complain.
But when he's going to complain and complain and complain, and when he backs up, and this actually, so it's interesting. Like, he complains all the time. When we see Caitlin Bree much later, the first thing that struck me about her is like she's complaining. And it's like, oh my God, like the two of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the funny thing is, they actually seem better for each other because they're more alike. But the reality is, you need to be going for someone who's trying to help you.
Right, not somebody who's just shitty in the same way you are.
And it's very interesting with
and she's passive.
Yes.
She's also passive because she like accidentally got engaged.
Right. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Yeah, so it's like, that's interesting that like Caitlin and Dante have the same vices of being passive complainers who want to just take stuff and let stuff happen to them and then complain about how unjust it is instead of doing something about it.
Yeah.
This conversation leads into the really big first like conflict.
Oh my God.
Which is, how many dicks has Veronica sucked? I
remember even as a kid, I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I did think it was funny, like my girlfriend sucked 37 dicks in a row. Like that does sound insane.
But he's being an asshole.
Dude, I remember even as a kid being like, okay, yeah, all right, that's a big number. But is she doing it right now? No, so what's the problem?
Right.
What is the problem?
And it's like, and also just like the way he's like screaming at her, and
and the way it was reversed too. Because remember, at first she was like, "Oh, you were with 12." Like she was like, "You were with 12 guys." Oh yeah,
but she also wasn't screaming at him or like calling him names because of that.
It was interesting the way the conversation flowed, right? Because first it was, "You've been with 12 women," and she was kind of like, giving him shit, but not.
Yeah, I think she might have like called him I don't remember. She might have like said you're a slut or something, but like she wasn't. She didn't seem like enraged.
It wasn't like the relationship is over.
Right.
And now the thing is, she says like, "Oh, I've been with like."
Yeah,
three
guys. She calls him a pig, but it's like it's like a light slap on the arm.
And she says she's only been with 3 guys, but then the snowball dude comes in. It was disgusting. I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't want to kink shame.
Oh God.
Kink shame,
Okay.
That just threw me off.
No. Can I tell you? Can I tell you the most disgusting? All right. So this was like years and years ago. This was like 10 years ago. I read in a Dan Savage column, and now that I have a slightly like stronger stomach than I used to, but I read this in a Dan Savage column like 10 years ago, and I could never get it out of my head. And anytime I tried to think about it too hard, I would start to vomit.
Oh no, are you going to put it in?
I'm going to put it in. So there was a guy who had this kink where he liked to, he wanted to like eat his own cum. But, okay, so you know how like, all right, you know how like you could be like jerking off to something really kinky, or you're like, whatever, it's really kinky. You're like, this is really
it's that
hot.
type of conversation, y'all.
You're like,
it's
like
we're talking about the viewers universe. We're gonna talk some shit.
So you're like, you're looking at something really kinky, you're jerking off, you're like, yeah, this is so fucking hot, this is so fucking, and then as soon as you come, you're like, no, right? Like as soon as you come, it's like that switch flips, and you're like, no, get it away from me. What's wrong? You degenerate. So this guy had this problem. He's like, I really want to eat my cum, but when I produce the cum, the idea is disgusting to me. And I can't remember if Dan advised this or if this was like reader advice. I think this might have been reader advice that came in like the next week's column.
Please don't tell me, is there a resolution for this?
Yes.
Oh no.
So what the person advised was that when he came, he should come into an ice cube tray and make cumsicles. And then when he was horny again, he should melt the cum.
Oh, we definitely got to send this to Kevin Smith now. This sounds like a scene out of a Kevin Smith film. Do you realize what you've just done?
I just recounted a Dan Savage column from 10 years ago. But
we got a podcast for the ages.
Oh yeah. So,
but
anyway, Snowball, yeah, that guy.
Well, I think it's interesting because this goes to one of the big gross out humor moments, right?
Yeah.
The gross out humor of, ew, this guy has this weird kink, but it's not just, ew, this guy has this weird kink. That weirdness, that grossness reveals something about this character.
About her.
Right? Yeah, that oh wait, she doesn't consider that to be sex. So now there's this weird conversation of what is considered to be sex.
Right, and like, if you ask me, like, is a blowjob sex, like, again, like, I'm gay. Like, yeah, it's sex. Like, you don't have to put a penis into a vagina for it to be sex. But that said, her thinking of it as being, like, less intimate, less of a big deal than fucking makes sense, and regardless of semantics, regardless of definitions, she wasn't intentionally lying to him, misleading him, and for him to freak out at her is him being an asshole.
At first, it feels disingenuous when I first watch it, but then when I think about how people do get such differing,
people have different definitions, and it's not
only definitions though, but also like different upbringings about. It's not like we all get, everyone gets to learn a very clinical look at what sex is. No, you know what I mean? Go on.
Oh, no, I was going to say, well, the interesting thing about them having that argument is when they're screaming at each other about sucking dicks and snowballs and all this stuff, there's customers.
Yeah, doesn't Jay steal from the store at one point while people are arguing?
Jay's stealing from the store at one point while people are arguing, but not even like Jay, like regular customers.
While they're talking about gross shit. But there's two themes that I've noticed about this film. There's the shit or get off the pot that comes later.
Right.
So like the complaint, first of all, not doing anything about your situation, but secondly, complaining and not getting over that older situation, right? So there's these two relationships that he had with these girls in high school.
It's like, oh, Caitlin cheated on me in high school. Oh, Veronica sucked 37 dicks at some point in her life.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It was like, it's not she just cheated on you. It was before your relationship even started, this thing happened. Remember the scene later with the muscle head guy? The muscle guy, yeah. Who's like, oh yeah, I had sex with the guy. First of all, it was like, all right, man, come on,
that guy. So here's the thing, I have actually been negged by trainers, that whole thing of
they do that
oh,
too.
You look really out of shape. Here's my card. I've had people do that to me.
The thing about
I'm just that's dude, no, asshole. I'm not going to give you money. You just insulted me.
And the thing about, and what I love about this movie, when you really think about it, because on a certain level, people who work in the service industry, they are the eye into how people really are, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so what I love about a big thing about this movie, besides a character development, is how the movie is about observing how weird people are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when it talks about the guy trying to find this carton of the milkmaid. Yeah. And then the egg guy who needs to find the perfect carton of eggs. It's just like, what is going on?
Well, and
with
also
people?
that it's in a small town, that it's in like a pretty small Jersey town.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these people he's running into are not just randos. They're people he went to high school with. They're people that he has personal connections to. And that's the thing in the View Askew universe in general, is the personal connections everywhere.
That's true. Even before in the very first movie, there's the idea that lots of things are connected.
Because, I mean, I come from a pretty, like, small city. I live in a small town, and, like, yeah, that's a thing that, like I, meet somebody, like, I go down the road to go to shul and meet somebody there. Turns out his dad was best friends with my partner's dead brother. And, like,
right.
Just like that kind of thing. Like, it's a pretty normal, like, small town thing. And it's interesting seeing that small town stuff like that represented in a way that's not sort of stereotypical Southern Gothic.
It doesn't feel like, it does not feel like that making fun of it or trying to, what's the word, simplify it.
Right.
It feels like it's very humanizing and realistic. What did you want to move on to next? Because I wanted to talk about the Star Wars conversation.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I was just gonna say, because getting to, like, when we first see Randall, because after that trying not to suck any dick on the way through the parking lot, which I did think it was a really funny moment, and again, just little details really making it, that there's a guy standing there, and when he hears Dante say that, he looks after Veronica and is like, oh, she's sucking dick, okay, and he walks.
She starts walking, and it's like, hey, you come back here.
But so then we get the title card that says Randall, and I love it that we see the title card say Randall, and the next thing we see is not Randall, but literally Randall's absence. The first we see of Randall is his absence, his negative Randall, because the first thing we see after that title card is this customer complaining about the guy's not there to open the video store, and I
forget about that, because I went into that movie knowing who he was already.
Right.
But, like, anyone going to that movie first, they don't know who Randall is. They don't know what he looks like. So
you might think that guy's Randall, yeah.
But the thing is, remember, he acts like he's also waiting for the movie.
Yeah, and that's also, and it's like, and that's again, like, when we do see him for the first time, he's like pretending to be a customer, shirking his duties, pulling a mean bar bet on that girl, like...
Yeah, he does, like, stuff that's just, like, there's one level of hating your job and being lazy, but there's another level that's like, all right, he does shit that's kind of vindictive.
Right, and I think that it's interesting that you bring that up, because I think, there's sort of the juxtaposition of Dante, who hates it and is complaining all the time and is really dissatisfied, and Randall at one point says, he's like, I do this, but I'm happy.
True.
I'm satisfied. You don't see me complaining. But I think that Randall actually, on a much deeper level, like, Dante complains and bitches, but he actually does seem complacent in his place, whereas Randall pretends he's satisfied, but then he is just, like, really mean and inappropriate and lazy and seems to be doing everything he can to get fired. And it's like, maybe Randall's actually the one who is deeply, deeply dissatisfied.
And remember when he has that one line where he says, like, he's like, you hate people, but I love crowds. I don't know what
He's a contradiction.
Yeah, and it's just like, what does that even mean? That doesn't mean anything. Like, you just like being in a crowd? Like, that means you like being among people. That doesn't make but he's just being a dick.
He's a man of contradictions. But so the guy who's complaining to Dante about Randall not being there, again, we've got themes of Randall's absent, Dante is taking the brunt, Dante is absorbing the customer wrath, Dante is taking that responsibility.
The $500 fine.
And the guy...
I know we're going to get to it, but Jesus Christ.
And this guy... The guy who's trying to return the videos starts shitting on Dante and insulting him with the whole, like, well, you're a loser and you work a minimum wage job and blah, blah, blah. And it's, of course, it's like anybody who's worked that kind of job, like, has had somebody say something like that to them of, like, like, oh, you must be an idiot because you're doing this.
And it's just like, I never understood people that are like that. It's just like, dude, you don't know how their day is going.
Yeah.
You don't know, like, this is like a typical low. Why you gotta shit on these people just to make yourself feel better, you know?
So Dante then, it's interesting because Dante, like, for the most part, he's the, like, stuffy, following the rules one, but he has a couple moments, and of course the big one comes later, but he has a little moment here where he throws the guy's keys out, and it's this, like, little moment of petty revenge where he's not doing, the nice, responsible thing, because he, like, the guy forgets his keys, and Dante knows where they are and sees them and throws them in the trash.
That's a good point.
And it's like, he's got these little release valves.
The little passive-aggressive moments.
Little passive,
where, vindictive moments, as he says. What does he say when he finds out that it's such the strangest thing, like, he finds out through, like, a newspaper that his ex-girlfriend is getting married.
Right.
And then she travels back from fucking Ohio just to reassure him that she's not. I'm like, what lengths are women going through just to, like...
Dude, I'm not going to drop names, but, like, straight girls who've done that shit.
Man!
Like, but...
Oh, God.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about it. It's like, this movie seems, like, on one level, if you really think about it, like, this is absolutely absurd, these things that are happening in this movie. But on another level, it's just like, yeah, but that's what people go through sometimes. Yeah. And it's just like, wow.
It is. It's like, so I'm in a Facebook group that makes fun of fake stories on the internet. But once in a while, somebody will post something and be like, this shit didn't happen. And it's something that we're like, no.
They're like, actually.
And then people, like, there's this whole thing where people comment by tagging a group that has a title that's a comment, and so a comment stuff like, just because nothing interesting happened in your life doesn't mean that this is possible. And it's like, yes, obviously, like, this would be a very unusual day, this kind of shit wouldn't happen every day, but nothing happens that would not be possible for to happen.
Yeah, even the sex with the dead body part, it's actually interesting.
That's the rigor mortis.
Well, but with
and the boners.
But it's also interesting. I'm sorry, I know we're skipping ahead, but I find that the reason why that happens is literally related to corporate chicanery at the top. Dante's ex-girlfriend, the slutty one,
right?
Quote unquote. But I actually do like her character at the end, and again, we'll get back to her. She has sex with a dead guy, of course, goes catatonic because that's weird as fuck. But it's interesting the way the whole thing set up. The reason why it happened was because she went into the bathroom. The lights were off in the bathroom.
Because they wouldn't fix it.
Right.
And it was happening for months and they wouldn't fix it.
Yeah. And it was interesting, like, it was brought up like a plot detail, like it didn't matter, but you see how important that was because she wasn't able to see who was in the bathroom. Oh, someone's touching her. Hey, this must be Dante, because he works in the place, and of course he would be touching me back here. And it's like, it's funny how her brain went there, and it's like purely because of the sensory, deprivation that she had based on the fact that some BS between the electrician and the owner of the store because the electrician wouldn't return some movies or something like that. Like, it's so funny how it's related in that way.
So we get the title card Syntax. So it's another one of these chapter titles. And I remembered when I watched this that the scene where I did this scene in acting class. I played Randall because I remember when he says, like, oh, people say crazy shit during sex. I called this girl mom once. Like, I literally did. I remembered because I remembered saying that line, so I remember doing that scene in an acting class. But that's the one where he finds out. So there's like some mild homophobia in the way it was kind of like, yeah, it was a different time. It was the 90s where they refer to a gay couple as being deviant or whatever.
Let's break down that scene.
Okay.
Because basically what happens is...
He says the guy that Caitlin was supposed to cheat on him with accidentally fucked a dude instead, and now they're married. Yeah.
Now, again, this is using that element of quote-unquote gross-out humor. The gross-out humor of guy having sex with another guy, but then he likes it. What? And on one level, it's like, oh, isn't that silly that happened? But on another level, it's just like, I mean, what if, like, these two guys were they didn't turn gay. They were apparently gay beforehand because apparently they didn't have a problem with it. What if the real issue was they weren't allowed to before this weird circumstance?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and there's stuff we'll get into when we talk about some of the other movies that, like, looking at it, like, from 2018 and looking at it as a queer person that I maybe, like, read something that Kevin Smith didn't necessarily intend, but they can be really fun.
And that's very interesting. We're going to get into some of those.
Yeah. And that's when Randall does the thing with the paper where he's like, has that reveal of, the four of you should discuss it. And her fiance puts the paper down. And it's a very, it's not a natural moment at all, but it's also, it's a very Randall moment. And he has quite a few of these moments where he is very clearly like, he looks like he's chilling, and yet the gears are just turning because he's waiting for the perfect moment. He has a few of those moments.
I was thinking specifically about the moment in the in his shop when the woman comes in.
The woman asking about the movie. It's like he looks like he's not paying attention, but he's very clearly paying an extreme amount of attention. He's weird.
Now, but see, I enjoy those moments. And the reason why I enjoy those moments is because that was him going like, you think I'm just a loser who's not paying attention, just an idiot.
And it's pulling one over on people just by paying attention.
Right.
Rather than spitting on somebody.
Yeah, and I didn't like that. And the other scene where the mother comes in
and
with her
like
kid.
reading all the porno channels.
Just
like, that was very
what
clearly.
What did she do? Like, what? Yeah. That wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
That was just like 90s. That was a 90s shock humor thing for the sake of it, because it didn't go anywhere.
Right. But so the Star Wars thing, that's when the Star Wars thing happens. So
it was interestingly political in a way that was in and of itself addressing this situation apolitically, but using a pop cultural thing in order to do so, right? Because what he said was, what he started off, Randall's point was that, hey, it's messed up that they blew up the Death Star the second time because there were some people who were innocent and didn't have anything to do with it. But a guy who just happens to be a roofer, comes in and he's like, hey, I know a little bit about, doing jobs like this. And it's like, someone's not going to take that job unless, they either agree with the politics of the person who's hiring for them for such a high profile job, or they care that much about the money that they're like, look, I'm willing to take that risk.
I found it slightly horrifying that the guy was like, oh yeah, I just like passed that job to my friend and then he died. It was like, whoa. He was just like, yeah, I just gave the job to my friend and then he got killed, so I was right. And I'm like, you got your friend killed. Like,
yeah, you directly got your friend killed. But it's just like, that guy could look up the same information as his friend could have. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but he decided to take a more riskier job because he knew the consequences and decided to. Yeah. And that was the point about the Star Wars thing. It's like the people who are most likely on that rig, they either agree with the politics or they're willing to take that risk because they're trying to make that money. And at the end of the day, it's like, what are you willing to give up for? For getting paid, for having job security, or because of what you believe in.
What does he say about Return of the Jedi having a downer ending?
Yeah.
Do you know about the original ending of Clerks?
The original ending.
Where Dante gets shot?
He was supposed to die at the end.
Right, yeah. And I'm so glad that that's not the case.
They didn't do that. I really think he would not have had a career because it was just like, imagine watching this movie, a whole generation of people, instead of going away with it like, that was a fun movie, being like, holy shit, why the fuck
it would have been kind of a slap in the face to the audience. Yeah.
So my question is, how did that kid get there?
The little kid, right? Because her mom's going to get so outraged that you sold her 4-year-old cigarettes. Why was your 4-year-old in a convenience store by herself?
Like, there was no parent around. She just got the cigarettes, walked out, lit them up. So she had a freaking lighter.
Yeah. Well, did she light it or did she just put it in her mouth? I can't remember.
I remember it pausing on her for a long time. So I'm assuming she put it in her mouth and then did at least light up thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's like also, if we're thinking from the perspective of like having to deal with customers and how they can be really unreasonable, like you clearly were neglecting your child, but somehow it's my fault.
Right. Like when the kid goes in to buy the NC-17 video game.
Right. And like obviously it is Randall's fault that he sold a 4-year-old a cigarette, but at the same time, the parent is not exactly without blame there.
But this scene is the most important scene of them all, because this is a scene where unequivocally Randall fucked up. He should have to receive the repercussions of the actions, and yet it just falls on Dante just because he's the one who's willing to roll over.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's a situation where it should have been like, no, you're paying this. You're dealing with this. That's not fair.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
and Dante, and like, because Dante's all lovesick and happy over Caitlin, he doesn't even get properly mad at him about it.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah, he's on a Caitlin cloud
and that's
when
the
Randall
reason
comes in.
why oh my goodness. See how this, like, it's doing so much more. Because, like, that should have absolutely not been excusable. You know what I'm saying? But your girl, Caitlin. What I actually thought was interesting about her is that her reason for why she is the way she is felt way more human and justifying than any other character in the film gave her credit for. Throughout the whole film, everyone is calling her slut. And then when she finally gets to speak for herself, she's like, I don't want to be the housewife who just gets tucked away and just, you know, does whatever her, you know, Chinese future husband tells her to.
What also, like, side note, why did everybody constantly refer to this guy as an Asian design major? Like, why did it matter? Like, it was so weird. But yeah, I mean, Caitlin definitely has hidden depths, and I think I think we can all agree cheating on people is bad.
But I feel like...
But then, like...
When she shows up, she's not the character. She's not just...
Right, she's a person. She's not showing up as just, like, some...
Like, her tits are hanging out of her fucking blouse or whatever. You know, she's like... She actually has a conversation, and she actually says, like, hey, I don't want to be tied down. I don't want this to be my life. May not know what it is, but I don't want it to be this stereotypical thing. And I feel like partially because she doesn't want it to be that stereotypical thing, I feel like that's part of where the stigmatization of her sexuality partially derives from.
And it's hard because it's like, obviously cheating on people is bad, but when they get
yes, for sure.
But when it gets mixed up with just general slut shaming, then it's a little like, it's like, no, she's not bad for sleeping with people, she's just only bad for cheating. But we come to the title card Malaise, and Dante says, I'm not even supposed to be here today for the 5th or 6th time. And I noted that he goes from anger to acceptance real fast, and it's kind of that not a healthy acceptance, but just giving up, which is, as we've discussed, is kind of Dante's thing, is just giving up and giving in. And that is when Randall comes in, and I found that Randall consistently through the movie, I'd think something, and then Randall would come in and say it. Or he's on the phone with somebody, and it turns out the boss is in Vermont. I think this is when he finds that out.
Yeah,
so he has to stay until closing when he was supposed to leave early in the day.
And you just see how, like, other people walk on him and continue to do so. Like, the boss is treated as if, like, oh, you know, it just couldn't help it. But it's like, no, they could have absolutely. And I think Randall actually brings it up later. It's like, you could have absolutely not come in today. You don't owe this place anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so Dante finds out that he is going to have to stay till closing, and he gets really angry first, and then he ends up just apologizing, and Randall comes in and says, why did you apologize? You had the right to be mad. Why did you back down? You're always doing that. You're always just backing down and sliding into defeat. Dante has the whole day been saying, I have a hockey game at 2. I have to leave. I have a hockey game at 2. And since he has to stay, he decides he's going to play hockey at the convenience store, which is a much crazier idea.
Remember Shit or Get Off the Pot, right? He tells a story about, like, when I was a kid and I wasn't potty trained yet, instead of, like, getting off the potty or something like that, he shits on it instead.
Yeah.
You know, like, showing how he would rather shit himself than cause an uncomfortable situation. So the way he resolves the issue actually is kind of that uncomfortable situation, because
it's shitting his pants instead of doing the more sensible thing of just making
a decision.
And you
know, he wants to be at the convenience store, but he still wants to have the game.
And it's kind of one of those things where, like, you know, you've known people who like let people walk all over them, and they let people walk all over them, and they don't stand up for themselves, and then once in a while they just like blow up and act like an asshole.
Yes, and that's exactly what that situation was.
You know, it's instead of standing up for your own rights in a reasonable way consistently, you just like are a martyr until you lose it and act like an asshole.
Yeah, because he completely goes like, oh, I'm justified in doing this. And it's funny how after that, Randall keeps using that as the reason why he should continue to do worse shit.
Yeah, it's like, well, you closed the store to play hockey on the roof, which, oh my god, like, watching them rollerblade around on a roof where the wall only came up to shin height, it was just...
Right? Like
I said, you trying to die?
Like I said...
all of you trying to die?
Like I said, isn't that funny? He's trying to have it both ways, but he ends up doing something that's honestly the worst possible option.
Yeah, it's nuts. like playing hockey on the roof, and then, luckily nobody dies. They just lose their ball and have to stop playing after a few minutes. But
however, like I said, I do want to give credit to the way he wrote actually both female characters. I feel like they're actually really good characters. And even the tertiary characters, like the woman who talks to them after the
incident.
Caitlin, Caitlin, she had a great scene where she was what's wrong with you guys? What's wrong with the store?
That was interesting because that kind of brought everything to a head of oh wow, when you put it like that, yeah. I like that we don't see them inside the funeral parlor. We don't see the corpse fall on the ground. Yeah. Because we don't need to, although apparently there was, I think, an animated special that was that scene.
Really?
Yeah, there's something, if you look on IMDb, there's Jay and it's Clerks, the missing scene, and it is that scene of the wake.
Now that wouldn't have worked. Actually showing it, the comedy of the implication of he fucked up.
The implication of we hear a thud, we hear somebody scream, and then we see Dante fucking barrel roll over the hood of the car, and it's really funny. Whereas I think seeing it actually happen would just be upsetting.
Just oh my god, that's a little too.
It's a little too much.
It's too real.
And that cut. Where he says, oh, there's nobody there at 4 o'clock on a Saturday, and there's people banging on the door like the zombie apocalypse.
That was a great scene.
And it is, and it's
a great gag.
And for somebody like Don, it's weird because it's you think that would be a huge source of anxiety for Dante, that he would be going, oh, there's probably people lining up outside the shop.
Well, it's the one time that he decides not to worry.
Yeah, he decides not to.
When you let him take the car, I was like, no.
Yeah.
Because it's you work at a video store. No. Does he not realize how much he's been... honestly, looking at this very objectively, I know he's your friend, but this guy's not your fucking friend.
Well, and it's also that, Randall knows precisely that Dante's weakness is giving in and letting people walk all over him, and takes advantage of it, which makes it even worse than if he was just doing it unthinkingly.
Yeah.
And then he leaves, and then we get the title card Paradigm. And that's when you have the trainer who's, being a dick to Dante, and then just piling on, insulting him, just randomly insulting him, insulting his body. And then it turns out, oh, and by the way, also I was sleeping with your high school girlfriend while you were
It's dating. Oh my god.
And, interesting side note, the girl talking to the trainer is the younger sister of Alyssa from Chasing Amy.
Really?
Yes.
Hey, look at that. We already got some continuity going on.
Yeah. So she, you can tell he just has the Bible and he's paying attention to everything. Kevin Smith, that is. But I saw a little bit of a parallel between the trainer trying to nag Dante and shame him about his body into paying for personal training, and the gum guy trying to scare smokers into buying gum. In both cases, it's I'm going to make you worried about your body. I'm going to make you scared. I'm going to make you feel insecure and upset. Buy this thing.
And here's the solution.
Right.
Yeah.
It's people should exercise. Yeah, people shouldn't smoke. But, using that to be you need to pay for my personal training. You need to buy this brand of gum.
You're not interested in the betterment of this person for the sole purpose of the betterment of that person.
Oh yeah, and also just using the shame and the fear as a tactic.
Yeah. It's just the guy has a permanent smirk on his face, oh, you don't know about this. Yeah. Oh, I banged your ex-girlfriend. This is a nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
I'm working at a I have to be a professional while you're telling me you banged my girlfriend and that I'm fat and I'm ugly.
Yeah.
Really, what's the situation?
And then also the guy with the fine for selling the kids cigarettes comes in, and this was interesting too. It's not just the trainer comes and he leaves and then what's next, and then he gets a fine. It dovetails, and it's just everything piling on, snowballing, raising to a crescendo, And then we hear Caitlin saying something to Dante, and he goes, Caitlin. And we don't see her at first. And then that's cut to the video store with Randall having a religious experience. Like, he literally falls to his knees.
Yeah. And I feel like there was supposed to be, like, it felt in a way that they were using the heavenly music of that in order to be a parallel of how Dante feels about, Caitlin.
Yeah. In real life, Dante Alighieri, the poet, met this girl Beatrice when they were both, like, 8 years old. And he never saw her again. Like, he knew her when they were literally prepubescent children. But his whole life, he was, like, obsessed with her. And he was like, Beatrice, that's, like, the love of my life. So, an unreasonable obsession with a woman who's been far away from him for a long time. Mm-hmm. And in the Divine Comedy, when Dante finally ascends out of hell, Beatrice is his guide. I can't remember if she's in Purgatory. I haven't read the Purgatorio, so I don't remember if she's in there or not. But basically, Beatrice is his guide through heaven. So we've got Dante's been in retail hell all day, or, quick stop hell, and then he seems to be coming out of it. And Caitlin, his Beatrice,
as Randall experiences his personal
as Randall is having this religious experience in the good video store.
What's interesting about her is that his compliance leads to him being in a video store. Mm-hmm. Her compliance leads to her, being on the arm of some guy who has millions of dollars.
Right, like she clearly fell upward.
Yeah. But it also involves giving up any sort of autonomy.
It's also interesting that Dante, despite the fact that he literally just found out about another time she cheated on him that he didn't even know about, that he's been hearing about this all day, that he's been upset.
This all in the same day, yeah.
Like, immediately, as soon as he sees her, he's just a love bug, and he's just completely smitten. He's completely happy to see her. And then Dante closes the store to talk to Caitlin, which is just like...
Oh, my God.
That's literally the third time he has closed the store that day. And after he lectured Randall about being responsible. So I think it's interesting because, we've seen Dante being hypocritical in points. His self-image is that he's this trustworthy, stable, reliable, responsible
He sees himself like this dog who stays...
Right. Yeah, he has closed the store 3 times in one day, once to play hockey on the rooftop, the next to drive away for quite some time, and the third time to talk to a girl.
Yeah, he's very irresponsible.
Yeah.
Like I said, he might as well have just taken the day off. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Especially driving.
Exactly. Yeah. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but we did find out right at the beginning, there's a line where Randall says, like, hey, I tried to call you at 1:30 this morning. You were on the phone forever. And we find out that he was talking to Caitlin. And then when they're talking, we find out, like, this has been an ongoing thing. They've been talking quite a lot. They've been, she's been calling him in the middle of the night for quite a long time and talking to him.
I forgot about that.
And, I think didn't know that he had a girlfriend, and he didn't know about the Asian design major that everybody constantly refers to as an Asian design major.
Yeah, and that was the thing that kind of got me. I was like, wait, what is his relationship with these women officially?
Because officially he's dating Veronica, and he's talking to... Do you kids still say talking to? That was like a thing when I was in high school, was people talking to.
I've never... Like, that... This just sounds like BS for I'm cheating on them, but,
Oh, he's definitely stringing... He's definitely stringing people along. Like, there's no 2 ways about that. He is emotionally cheating on Veronica.
That's what I'm saying,
and misleading and stringing Caitlin along. So, yeah, no, he's definitely doing that. But then, so their dialogue was weird because, and this might come back to them being, like, having some of the same flaws and both being kind of passive, because they're having this conversation where Caitlin seems to be saying, like, no, I don't want to get back together with you, like, in your dreams, that's not what I came here for. And then by the end of it, she's like, yeah, of course, you idiot, I want to get back together with you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like she's, like, admitting it or something. It just feels, like, really weird and inconsistent, and, like, she didn't know what she was talking about.
Yeah.
He doesn't seem to know. So there's a lot of this very, like, it's weird because most of the dialogue in the movie is very sharp and very, like, the characters have very clear points of view, and it's very clear what they want and what they're talking about and what their perspective is. And in this, it's like, what does she want? What does he want? What are they doing?
Did it feel like a scripting thing?
I'm going to give Kevin Smith the benefit of the doubt here and assume that it's intentional. Well, it's also just showing, like, something about who Caitlin is that she is indecisive and not straightforward, and that Dante is too much of a coward to be straightforward.
Because the thing that bugged me out was like, wait, so he's angry and calling like a newspaper and getting all up in a huff about his ex from 3 years ago getting married to someone else because he kept talking to her on the phone and thinking that maybe it was a possibility, you know, that person's going to be there on the side. Because like you said,
the moment you mentioned earlier where she actually does seem to have some common sense. She's saying, I don't want to just get married to this rich guy and get pushed out of having a career and be shunted into a corner as a housewife. And Dante throws a little hissy fit and calls her a slut. It, like, kind of reflects the fight he had with Veronica, where it's kind of a hang-up, where, like, apparently he just has an issue with any woman that he's involved with
having sex with
other people,
more than a certain amount of people.
Right. So the next title card is Whimsy. And my note here was, why does everyone keep saying Asian design major? Like I kept, like, at first, like, it turns out...
Like, is it supposed to mean something?
Like, yeah, because it turns out he is a design major who is Asian, but I kept thinking, like, he's majoring in Asian design, whatever that means, or, like, that's a thing, like, that was a thing, like, an early 90s thing, like, Asian design, like... So that was, yeah. And
You're an old Asian designer.
Randall casually threatens Caitlin and says, if you break his heart again,
I'll kill you. I was like, all right.
But I actually thought it was like, okay, he wasn't being, like, violent or threatening towards her.
I know, but
it was like,
feels like a
I mean, I think it was taken as the metaphorical I'll kill you.
Yeah.
And it was also like, it was like this weirdly sweet moment of like, yeah, okay, he's been like a dick to Dante and been taking advantage of him, but he genuinely does care about him.
And he doesn't like seeing him get hurt.
Right, and that was kind of a sweet moment. I did like that, like, he may be saying that to her, and then, of course, he checks out her ass as soon as she turns around, because he's still Randall. And then, so Caitlin comes out of the bathroom, genuinely seems to believe it was Dante.
I think they carried the joke out just enough for it to work.
The timing was very good. And then, of course, we have the funny lady, I think she was a coroner, the lady who's questioning them. And it's just like, wait a second, I thought you were at a hockey game. I thought you were at a funeral.
Such a great moment, like, revealing their incompetence.
It is this moment that just kind of puts a button on it of like, yeah, when you really break it down, you had a fucked up fucking day.
Yeah, and like I said, why didn't you just stay home?
And also, like, I will say, like, also the people operating, like, so they leave the porn magazine on top of the corpse in the dolly, not a dolly, what's it called?
The gurney.
Gurney, thank you, the gurney. Yeah. They leave the porn on the corpse, and then she comments on Dante smelling like shoe polish. That's just a thing throughout. Everybody's constantly talking about them smelling like shoe polish. There's a little callback to Randall's cousin who died trying to suck his own dick, who we heard about in the car on the way to the funeral. And then I noticed this couple of things. Poor Caitlin, who is in traumatic shock because she just fucked a corpse, is shut in the ambulance with the corpse she just fucked. They put, like, not only this, so we see that the corpse... Like, no. And it took me, like, I actually had to rewind a couple times, and then I was like, wait a second. So the corpse is wheeled into the ambulance with his erection, with, like, a foot-long erection. Like, first of all, this guy had, like, a fucking Ron Jeremy cock, because he's got a foot-long fucking erection sticking up under the blanket, and Caitlin is sitting in the ambulance next to the aroused corpse.
He's still aroused.
Right, she's sitting in the ambulance, and then they shut her in with it. And then here's the kicker. Guess who else is in the ambulance?
Who?
Willem. Willem's sitting there for no reason other than he's that fucking dumb. Willem is sitting in the ambulance with the corpse and Caitlin.
Oh my god. I didn't even really think about that. I'm glad you pointed that out. How absurd that is.
I did not notice until but it was like, oh my god, because you think
why would they do that?
After poor Caitlin is wheeled away, we get the title card, Lamentation. So Dante is lamenting. Randall is playing with a chip in a jar of salsa and pretending it's the shark from Jaws.
Yeah, but I think he was trying to do that to try to like...
Yeah, he was sort of like trying to be silly and cheer Dante
pop
up.
culture reference,
right?
Huh?
So Jay we see coming in trying to be the voice of reason, and as we mentioned, like I think that like he fucks up the line. It may have just been Jason Mewes fucking up the line, and like we think like he's gonna be all deep, and then. And what I like is then Silent Bob, who is, again, we mentioned, kind of reflects Dante. He's kind of like a mirror of Dante.
Such a sobering moment, man.
And he says, there's a million fine-looking women in the world, but not all of them are going to bring you lasagna at work. Most of them are just going to cheat on you. And that is, I think, because it's like, if Jay's line had been presented as the actual moment of wisdom and like, well, my grandma used to say, here's this down-home wisdom, and it's some, like, overwrought metaphor, it would have been annoying.
Yeah.
And instead, Silent Bob is telling him, like, the very, like, concrete, like, this girl didn't cheat on you, she brought you lasagna.
When you find someone that's special, don't fuck it up. It's basically what he's trying to say.
But he puts, so then we see, like, Dante's like, oh yeah, he's right, I need to, like, respect Veronica, I need to treasure her. And then of course we immediately cut to Randall telling Veronica everything about Dante, which
bad timing.
But here's the thing, from Dante's point of view it's tragic, but honestly from my point of view, from an audience point of view, it's like good, because frankly for me watching it, if he had just gotten back together with Veronica and been like, yeah, now I know to treasure her and blah blah blah, it would have been like, yeah, but fuck her, he doesn't
deserve her. He doesn't deserve her.
He doesn't deserve her, and it would have just been like, I would have felt bad for Veronica, because then it's like, she's just going along.
You're right.
And the thing is, like, other people knew what was going on. She's going to hear down the road. She's, it's just like, whatever. So it was actually very satisfying. And then, of course, we get catharsis, and the catharsis is finally they fucking, like,
the
go
fight
at it.
happens, yeah.
I loved that, like, fucking Looney Tunes, like, Randall wandering on, and then just you see the hand grab his neck. I love that fucking Looney Tunes. And the fight was so realistically
weirdly
awkward,
realistic.
where they're just rolling all over. And
I love how it just looks like this is the type of scene that, like, you'd always want to make if you worked in a, convenience store and you just wanted to fuck
just
around,
getting to, like, grab the ho-hos and stuff.
Exactly.
I loved the cat having a reaction. Now, so, again, coming back to the homoeroticism, there was something very post-coital about the way that they're lying together after the fight. Because, like, you think about, like, they fight. Nobody.
Sorry, I had to throw another Simpsons reference.
Oh, okay.
It's great. All right.
Oh, no, it's fine. But yeah, so they fight. There's no, like, nobody ends up getting seriously injured.
No one wins or loses.
They just at some point stop, and they're lying there.
You're so right. I always thought it was so weird. It doesn't feel like the end of a fight.
But it's sexy. Like, Randall is lounging there, very sensuously rubbing his throat. And he says, like, oh, it hurts, you hurt my throat. But he's like, It's very sensuous. It is very sensuous. And then Dante's just completely... Dante is completely supine on his back, like, just, like, looks flat out like he just, like, got the shit fucked out of him.
Right,
and it's like, if you think about their relationship, it's like, obviously their relationship's platonic, but if you think of, like, their relationship, if you think of sexuality as, like, a metaphor for their friendship, they had makeup sex. I found it very satisfying when Dante does one more, I'm not supposed to be here, and Ronte.
Yeah,
that's their shit name. Dandel.
I'm glad we created that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you put
Dandel is like what you do with a little kid when they're on your knee. But so when Randall says fuck you and throws something at him, it's like thank you. It's like shut the fuck up, Dante. We know you're not supposed to be here.
Dude, that really was a cathartic moment. Wow.
It was very cathartic, yeah. And then when he says that guy Jay's got it right, it's like that's like
lay it out.
Jay and Silent Bob show up, do their job of hanging out and selling weed, and leave.
They have no pretensions about what they are.
They're not just the not pretensions, but they're also not fucking stuff up. And Randall and Dante, for all Randall says that he's comfortable, is clearly not. And for all that they talk about, like, this is their job, whatever, they are so... They're like beating at the walls of their cage so hard that they really, like, they close the stores, they inconvenience customers, they get people really upset, they sell cigarettes to children, like...
Yeah, I didn't see one person complain about Jay selling weed.
Nobody complained. Right, exactly. So, like, then we've got denouement, and I don't... So they're
Denouement?
Denouement.
Denouement? Is that how you say it?
Yeah,
okay.
it's like the, like everything sort of coming together after the climax.
Ah, okay.
The climax. Climax. And then so they're having...
Yeah, 90s.
Right, and then they're just doing this, like, friendly, chattering, like, normal.
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
seems like
everything's back to normal.
All is forgiven. I did notice that, like, what's right in our face in the middle of the frame is a, like, tabloid headline of "World's Fattest Man Weds Tiniest Woman." I feel like that can be unintentional, and I feel like it might be a reference to, them being sort of mismatched in a way. Maybe it's referring to Dante and Veronica. Maybe it's referring to Dante and Randall. Maybe it's referring to Dante and the Quick Pot and the
quick stop. Yeah.
The quick
Quick pot. No, that's Jay's.
That's Jay's business. The quick pot. Yeah. And then I did find it very charming when he's singing to Randall about being berserker. He's dancing.
What is that song that he's singing?
It was a callback to it's like the Russian guy's metal
Was he
band
doing
song.
berserker?
He was singing like Randall's a berserker.
Yeah, like that's Randall. He's a berserker.
And he's
what was that dance he's doing?
He's like dancing.
Did that happen at any other point in the movie? Like
no, but it's like it also he's like do the thing, and it's like. You get the sense that it's like, okay, their friendship exists outside of this day. We can tell it's a thing. We don't have to have seen it already.
That's what I thought was interesting. The reason why I bring it up was just because, like, maybe I missed it. But now that you say it, it's just like, oh, it's just an example of how, like, outside the universe this is, in that, like, us seeing it, especially for the first time, it's just like, what is that? But it's like, I don't need to know what that is. That's their thing.
Right, it's their thing.
Yeah.
And then the very last line of the film proper is Randall tossing the shoe polish open sign back in and saying, "You're closed." And it's like, oh. And it's like a nice little, like, fin button. And then I noted that the lyrics of the music over the end credits are, "I may never get what I want, but I'm not going to stop trying." Which is kind of ironic because that's the opposite of Dante. Dante's not striving. He's not trying and failing. He's not trying so that he cannot fail. He's succeeding more or less at remaining a Quick Stop employee because he's not trying to do anything else.
And it just, I know we've been doing a lot of analysis, but
yeah.
Can we just have a moment of just enjoying the fuck you that Veronica gives Dante?
Oh, that was really satisfying.
And it's like, it was said in a way that was like, it wasn't fuck you. It was like, fuck you.
I was so glad that happened. It would have been so if Dante had succeeded in just being like, oh, well, now I'll be a better boyfriend and get back together with Veronica.
Nah, he needs to suffer.
It would have been unsatisfying. And he wouldn't, and you know what would have happened is he would have gotten back together with her and then eventually just like forgotten that he had resolved to be better and appreciate her.
But Veronica, I love you. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that moment.
She's great. The acting isn't always professional caliber. In fact, most of the time it is not professional caliber. Some of the dialogue feels like very like, okay, this is a 22-year-old writing his first screenplay.
It feels very much like, those movies in the 90s where it was like the what did they call it? The normcore or whatever, where they're trying to make it so like normal, like the actors just come in with their clothes.
I actually thought what was interesting was my thought was that this is the opposite of mumblecore. Okay. Because Kevin Smith is not he doesn't shy away from being a writer. The dialogue sounds writerly. Like mumblecore is like, oh yeah, man, what's up?
Well, see, I think this is that trying to go for reality aesthetic, but done in the way that I feel like it should be done right. Like, I feel like there needs to be some sort of heart, some sort of center.
It's the difference between realism and naturalism.
Yes.
It's realism.
Yes.
It's not trying to be naturalistic. It gets at the truth of the realness. And the thing is that what's really brilliant, besides just the characters being memorable and there being a lot of snappy lines and stuff, what's really brilliant about this is the structure of the film is, I think, what makes it watchable.
Yeah, you come back to it, right.
It is a nested series of callbacks and Chekhov's guns that all interlace and respond to each other. And the thing is that if it had not had the guy watching the cat poop while Dante's on the phone, if Dante had rolled out of bed in the morning instead of out of his closet, if the scene with the jerk personal trainer had finished completely before the tax guy came in, it would not have been as watchable. It would not have been as memorable, because it was all these little unexpected moments and all this little, like, just
tightly interwoven sort of things.
And all these places where Kevin Smith did not make the obvious easy choice of what was going to happen and how it was going to happen.
Yeah.
That's what made this thing stick around, because you could have written a worse version of it.
Mm-hmm. And it could have been adequate. You know?
I was going to say, in fact, talking of a worse version of Clerks, I think I told you I found the pilot.
And if you like what we're doing, maybe we could review it sometime.
Yeah, we might. I will probably need to drink a lot. And the pilot was actually like, I got through like literally a minute and 15 seconds, I think was where I gave up. And they didn't have the same actors. It was very sitcom-y. But it was like this setup. It was like, there's a girl and she's like, I don't believe tanning gives you cancer. And the one character that I think was supposed to be Randall but didn't resemble him in any way was like, oh, really? Then what gives you cancer? Lotion. Oh, lotion. Like, it was like
that was so bad. It was
so fucking painful. But part of what was bad about it was that it was like, you could see every fucking thing coming a mile away, and it was like...
And you could see them trying to do the aesthetic of we're just a couple of people having normal banter, but it's just like...
And it was and it was like it's the difference between, if we're gonna, like, we could use a musical metaphor of like, the way Kendrick Lamar raps, or the way that Tom Waits sings, where it's so interesting because it's a little off the beat and it's not just like, whereas you think of like the most plodding, boring, painful to listen to everything square on the beat,
exactly where it's going. What's even the point of listening to the song? Because I know where it's going.
That's like, I feel like this film is like the cinematic, like the screenwriting, the screenplay structure equivalent of Kendrick Lamar or Tom Waits, where it's just like a little off the beat enough and unexpected things happening and unexpected rhymes happening, more or less.
Yeah, I think the way we currently, I'm thinking about it right now, and I honestly don't think we appreciate this film enough. I'm thinking about...
Because it's remembered, I come back to Twin Peaks, which was another sort of cult classic from the early 90s. People talk about Twin Peaks and they're like, oh yeah, coffee and cherry pie and da-da-da. And they like don't remember.
Wasn't it fun how weird it was without really thinking about it?
And the log lady. And then when you actually watch it, it's a weird, brutal fucking show with like occultism and like deep mythos and really serious crime and violence. And it's a very deep thing, and I think that Clerks in the same way is like people like, oh yeah,
this it's a fun stoner comedy about the guys who hate working there,
right? And it's actually not a stoner comedy. Like you have like Jay and Silent Bob are stoners, but they're sort of like this little like
periphery characters,
peripheral and comic relief, and kind of like you said, the Greek chorus that doesn't really say much, and it's actually like about ennui and ambition and.
It's got a message. Every time I think about, how people think about this movie, in a way, there is this sort of dismissal of it, or treating it like it's just cute. Like, oh, yeah, they talk about Star Wars. Isn't that funny? It's like, but it's actually...
But it's like, what are they saying when they talk? They're not just like, who's better, Han Solo or Luke Skywalker? Like,
right.
They're using it to talk about a really serious issue when it comes to, what are you risking when you go to work? What's your job worth? Like, how does that align with who you are as a person?
So, yeah, I think that about wraps up our review for Clerks. We both love it, of course.
Of course.
Join us next time when we will be looking at the next film, of course, because this is how it all started, Mallrats. Because of course that's what's next.
we should do Mallrats next. Actually... Really interesting little quick note. The character of Willem appears in Mallrats, played by a different actor.
Oh, okay.
So until next time, I'll be staring at a sailboat.
I thought that was going to end it.
I don't know.
I like that. We're staring at sailboats that we can't see.
Yeah.
That's our sign off.
Yeah.